It's America at Night with Rich Valdes.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdes, live with you from New York City. And, of course, we're talking about the death of Pope Francis. We're talking about the encroachment of the radical left as they continue to sexualize communities across the country and so much more. And I want to bring in our guest, Alex Bougher. She's the head of Moms for Liberty in my neck of the woods. Alex, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today.
You bet.
Very excited.
I want to talk about this. First, we'll start with the big story of the day, Pope Francis dying. And I just want to preface this by saying, of course, my thoughts and prayers to everybody that's a Catholic. But the alert that I saw was on Twitter. And when for whatever reason, I looked at the comments. And I couldn't believe what I saw. I was looking for one nice comment, and I found it from a guy that said, I'm not a Catholic, but the Pope was really a great peacemaker. And I heard Jesus once said, blessed are the peacemakers. And I thought to myself, wow, because there was a whole bunch of other people that really didn't like this guy. I got to tell you, I didn't know he was that unpopular.
I think the problem is that people feel so abused and taken advantage of, and this is supposed to be, the church is supposed to be a place of faith and worship and a safe place, right? And that's a word that the left likes to use quite a bit, but this is an appropriate word to use here because you should be able to go there and really feel safe and tell your sins, if you would, or wishes or whatever. And unfortunately, there has been a lot of abuse in the church. So I think that people now put those two things together. They just don't feel safe there anymore, and they're really starting to talk out about that. So there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of hurt, and people aren't afraid to show it. They're not hiding it anymore.
Have you heard anything from the moms that you're in touch with about a potential leadership vacuum in the world of a religious figure? Anything like that?
Not really. We're personally... Moms for Liberty is very mission focused. So in other words, we're all about parental rights and empowering and educating parents to protect their children and to protect their rights. So we really try to stay in there, but I'm not really hearing anything, in the other mom world about that at all. No.
Now, as we know that this particular pope, he was very popular for being very liberal. He was a very liberal pope. He was very focused on allowing a lot of things to go. And I think that's why he today is not as revered as other popes in the past. But kind of switching off of that, but in that same vein, there seems to be a lead that was taken. People have picked up that mantle of folks in the church community, not necessarily Catholics, but other churches that have embraced the flying of the LGBTQ flag or even the flying of other flags that I didn't even know existed. And I think this is something that happened in your community.
It did. So a lot of churches, and one specifically in my town as well, fly what's called a progressive flag. And it's not your typical pride flag, right? So it doesn't just have the rainbow colors. It also has a black triangle. It has a little circle in it. And that will stand for non-binary or trans. And, this is, again, some people will say, faith is faith, love is love, everyone is welcome here. And, while that is wonderful, and listen, love who you want to love, it's not an appropriate flag to be flying because unfortunately, the baby blue and the baby pink have been taken over by the MAPS or pedophiles.
Well, tell us about this MAPS. I talked about it on the show before, but when it came about, it was a professor, I think his name is Alan Parker, Allyn. And he himself, or she herself, was trans and was talking about this minor attracted persons. Blew me away.
Well, they want it to not sound as bad, right? They don't want pedophile. Everyone knows what a pedophile is, and that sounds awful because it is awful. And so they want to bring this, it's sort of like if you're straight, gay, or now that's your sexual preference. And they want to make it seem mainstream. It's not mainstream. You're not a minor attracted person. You're a pedophile. And unfortunately, they have taken over the colors of this flag. So now when it's flying in a church, that's what it's, saying to people. Hey, if you're gay, you're welcome here. If you're straight, you're welcome here. If you're trans, if you're non-binary. And now, if you're MAPS, you're welcome here. And that's, completely inappropriate.
This is interesting to me because I think people that struggle with whatever sin issue is their issue, and I don't think they should be precluded from a church.
Sure.
But the argument that they make, and this is something I heard on the radio. There was a station in Philly that a lady called in, like my show, people call in and say what they want to say. And this woman called this station in Philly and said, I'm working on behalf of this organization that is helping to destigmatize pedophiles because people think that minor attracted people are the same as pedophiles, but the reality is just because they're attracted to children doesn't mean they've committed any crime. And we shouldn't treat them like criminals. And in my head I was thinking, until they do, right? And I didn't mean to be mean. I meant to be a dad, right? That's the dad in me thinking, if you have if you're an alcoholic, and maybe alcoholics can spend a lifetime in recovery without ever drinking again. I don't know if that's the case when it comes to recidivism with child sex offenders. So there's so much I don't know, but my gut tells me this is not good. And I know if I went to a church, and I do, and I had kids when I went to church when they were little, I did not want anyone that was of that persuasion to be around my children. And matter of fact, if you were working with kids in any of the kids' ministries in the church, you had to go through a rigorous background check. So I wonder, is it a situation, and this is really a question, but if people are minor attracted and they want to live a Christian life or any other faith, is there a special church that they go to? Is this the church for the MAPS people? Is this the church for the lesbians and gays? I don't know, because I don't know if it's my position to say your sin is not as good as that sin, or my sin, or this lady cheats on her husband, or that guy, right? So it just becomes so crazy to me. But there's no flag for the adulterer. There's no flag for, the guy that, I don't know, beats his wife, or whatever the sin of choice is, right? So to me it becomes, what's up with the flags? Even if you're going to accept all people and say, come as you are, Jesus loves you. Right. Okay. What's with the flags?
I feel like there's so much to unpack here. There's a lot. Like, first of all, to drink alcohol is not illegal, okay? But to touch a child is. So there's a huge difference there. And if someone were to say, hey, I'm really attracted to that child, that's going to draw attention to someone like, okay, that person's about to do something that's illegal. If you were to say, hey, I'm going to go hurt that person, it's everyone's job to try and stop that person from hurting that person, right? So to me, those are two very similar things right there, because they're both, you don't hurt somebody, and they're both illegal. So, yeah. So that's the difference right there. So there's no way for them to be able to live, even if they're just thinking about it. We're just allowing them, like, here, just live your life until you do something bad.
Encouraging bad behavior.
And you're encouraging bad behavior. So I just really feel like if that's something that you're thinking, hey, let's get you help.
Right.
But you shouldn't just be walking around. You certainly shouldn't be around young children. Mm-hmm. I'm a Girl Scout leader. I'm a cheer coach. I run Bible club at school. You have to go through all kinds of certifications, background checks, all kinds of things that they check to make sure that you're an okay person to be around children. Yeah. And I think that's very important. If I were to hang that flag, for instance, in my classroom, I would hope that the parents would be, very concerned and say, hey, that needs to come down. You're with our children. This is what that means. And that's what these churches don't understand. They just want to say, oh, you're against the gays, or you're against, these MAPS, or you're against. No, I just want to protect kids. You can love who you want to love, marry who you want to marry, but you don't talk to children about it. And that's something that people, they can't seem to wrap their head around. When I was in first grade, I didn't know the sexual orientation of my first grade teacher.
Right.
That's not something you talked about. 6 years ago, if you talked to your kids about this sort of sexual nature, you would have been arrested. If you showed them a book that had pornography in them, which now is like being pushed in these schools in this agenda, you would be arrested. And instead, now you're the one who's in trouble for not allowing your child to look at that flag, to read that book, and so on and so forth. So we need to now that Trump is back, it's great, but we as parents and community members, because you see it happening too, we need to stand up for what's right and say, hey, this doesn't belong there, get it out.
What is Moms for Liberty doing to work with these churches? Because it sounds to me, you make valid points, and I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Sure.
The reality is a church ought to know the difference between harboring someone that's potentially criminal and the love of Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. And And if there's a gray area, then things should be clarified by way of the community, by way of the court. What is it that you guys are doing to bring this to their attention and to help the community?
Well, we do a lot of community outreach. We do a lot of programs. We work with the schools. We work with the churches, the ones that work with us. They often look at us a certain way as well. And we're trying to get rid of that stigma and say, hey, listen, no, we can help you. Like, we're here to help you in any way that we can. And some of them are fantastic, and they work well with us, and we raise money for them. And, we could do fundraisers, and there's a lot of outreach in terms of young women that need help, especially, maybe they need help going to school, or maybe they prom dresses. I mean, you name it. Well, if there's a need, we'll help with it. And that's a great way to learn your community and really find out what's going on. Unfortunately, the churches that have something to hide, they're the ones that are closing the door in our faces. When we said, hey, listen, you shouldn't be putting this flag at a church where young children are present. Honestly, it's illegal. It shouldn't be up at all. But you have young children there, so certainly it should be taken down. They'll just turn around and
free
start,
speech.
Yes, that's it. Well, free speech. Oh, Moms for Liberty is a hate group. All these other things. No, we don't hate. What you're showing is illegal, and it's abusive to children. So.
It sounds like there's a high degree of politics involved within the church, sadly. Tell us a little bit about what inspired your journey. How did you get to where you are today, where you want to do Girl Scout leading, where you want to do everything under the sun, where you're really this all-around great mom?
Well, thank you for that. We are very busy. I have 3 beautiful children. They are definitely my life. I'm not really sure what I would do without them. I didn't have, I would say best childhood growing up. It was my brother and I. We were home alone a lot. I pretty much would raise him, after school. My parents were both very hardworking people, but they just, you had to work 2-3 jobs to be able to afford to live in Bergen County. They moved up from the city and from Weehawken and up to Park Ridge where we are. And so they were just never home. I definitely didn't really get along really great with my parents, for sure. I can say that. But, I also kind of was rebellious as well, and ended up going to boarding school from 14 to 18. And that was a lawn school in Maine. And that's actually got shut down. It was one of the most notorious abusive schools in the United States. And they would have kids come from all over, from Dubai, from Brazil, all parts of the United States. And from all different reasons, right? Maybe you didn't get along with your parents and you wouldn't stay home like me. Maybe you did have a drug problem. There was all different issues to be sent there. But it was run by people like absolutely no teachers, no therapists. It was actually opened by a mafia guy, Joe Ritchie, up there in Maine. And he usually just owned horse racing places.
Wow.
And he saw this huge money maker in the troubled teen industry, and he said, all right, I'm going to open a school, and charged parents $50,000 a year. And think this is 1994, so that's a lot of money. And you lived in these really barren sort of, the bunk beds were from the old army bunk beds, and there was nothing, right? But they would show these parents these beautiful brochures of everything that we were doing that we were not doing. And it was a absolutely horrific place. You couldn't talk to your parents for a few months until you wrote this guilt letter. And, if it didn't seem like enough, you basically had to lie to sort of talk to your parents and get to that point. And I had no one to advocate for me. I was 14. I just got there. I didn't know anybody. You can't talk to your parents. They would brainwash you and manipulate you. And they would listen to your phone calls when you could finally talk to your parents.
Jail.
It was worse than jail, honestly, because at jail, you could smile at the person next to you. If you smiled at the person next to you, they would say, are you trying to form a contract to run away together? It was wild. You couldn't smile at anybody. You couldn't look at the front door. They would, take your laces away. I mean, it was worse than jail.
Wow.
And if you were somebody like me whose state would pay for half of it, instead of only being there for a year, you went for 4 years. And that was during Christmas and summer, like, no vacation time, nothing. You were there. And so when I left there, I definitely felt happy to leave and definitely in survival mode, like, okay, I really don't know too much about life or how to even be an 18-year-old, and like, what do I do? And I had nobody that could help me with that, and felt very lost for a long time. Finally did figure it out, and fast forward to having 3 kids and COVID, and seeing what was happening to these children on a day-to-day basis. They're getting yelled at for having water, or looking out the window, or
going to the playground.
I'm like, oh my God, this is like boarding school, not as bad.
Right.
On this other level with like little kids. What are they doing to these children? They're not taught like how to think, but what to think. And it's a prison there as well. Asked to go to the bathroom, asked to share your thoughts. And this really got me thinking about, okay, maybe this public school system is not right for kids, or maybe I need to help the troubled teens. Like, I didn't get the help that I needed. So that sort of got the wheels rolling. And then when the mask mandates came, I was like, no, my kids are not wearing masks. You're not going to cover their beautiful faces. It's not happening. And I wrote this whole letter to our school about Murphy's executive order. And it said, well, my son has speech and hearing issues, and my daughter has an IEP. At the time they were 5 and 7, right? The little ones. And the principal was actually great. He's like, this seems good to me, but, the superintendent said no. And that's when I realized I didn't know my rights as a parent. I'm like, what do you mean no? This is my kids. I'm telling you, you know? And that really, excuse my language, it pissed me off. I'm like, I got to do something about this. So I had seen something about Moms for Liberty on TV, and I gave them a call and talked to actually Tiffany on the phone. And I said, how can you help me? I don't know what I'm doing. I should be the ultimate say about what goes, on my child, in my child, and what they learn, and I don't know my rights here. So they were great. They taught me. We got a lawyer. They were in school maskless 3 or 4 days later. And really all they wanted was that signature on the same piece of paper that I wrote. And that's really what it came down to, was the school is afraid to get sued. It's all about liability. So, just learning about all that stuff. And it's been a wild ride since then, and helping other parents and helping children. And we still have a long ways to go.
What's coming down the pipe for you for the foreseeable future? What's the next big project?
Big project. Well, I would love to really help people on a larger scale. I'm actually writing a book currently about the troubled teen school industry. I'm doing it in my spare pockets of time, so hopefully it'll be out in a year. But just sharing with everybody. We're throwing some really huge events to bring it nationally. We were at the Reawaken tour with Clay Clark and General Flynn, and that was really, really awesome. Trying to talk him into doing a Keep America Awake tour. Like, don't get complacent. I know Trump's in. I know it's the golden, age and era. But this is how it happened the first time. Was people got, complacent, and they got comfortable, and they let everyone take over, and we can't do that again. So I'm really trying to talk, that into happening, and just basically, doing as many of these as we can, and so that we can reach a larger audience and know, listen, you're not alone. We can help you. We will help educate you. We will empower you. And, you have more choices than that. If your child's having an issue in public school, pull them out. Homeschool them, charter school them. There are so many options. Having your child safe and happy is way more important than making sure that they go to school.
Amen to that. We're about to wrap up with Alex Bougher, but not before we talk about what happened in Washington, because on Friday we heard from Secretary Bobby Kennedy from the HHS about all of these new developments and new facts and figures about autism. Alex Bougher, tell us more.
Yes. So MAHA is a fantastic movement. It's actually probably my biggest passion, actually, myself. I have an older daughter who was vaccine injured by the HPV shot. And that really got me doing some research about, hey, what's in these vaccines? Should we spread them out? Should we not do them at all? And, back then, this was in 2013, you were sort of hushed about that. Like, don't ask those questions. The doctor is always right. And you didn't feel heard. Like, no, my child is hurt. I don't think I should do this to my other children. I need to ask questions. Who should I be talking to? And you just felt that you couldn't talk to anybody and that there was really no one to talk to. And this is, we sort of had our own community for a very long time. My children now go to a holistic doctor and we all sort of talk to each other and we help each other out. And, oh, they have an earache. Okay, mulling garlic in the ears and things like that. But, we really needed more help because why is the autism, rate so high? Why is there so much autoimmune disease? We've been basically told that like eczema is normal or all these other issues are normal. It's not normal. There's a reason behind it. And if you look at the vaccine inserts, it literally says there basically all these toxic ingredients, okay? If you were to spoon feed your child these ingredients, you'd be arrested, okay? But instead they inject them in the child. So I think it's incredible that they are looking into this. We were actually able to go down to the White House about a month and a half ago for the first MAHA roundtable with Kennedy, and we were able to say what were the most important things. Vaccines were number one. After that, of course, it was formula and the food and what they're spraying in our skies and things like this. But I think it's fantastic because he is listening to us, and they've been extremely transparent about what they're doing. And as he comes with his findings, he's going to be letting us know about them. But, I think it was Jenny McCarthy, what was it, like 15 years ago or something? She was the first one, and everyone was like, oh, this lady's a quack job, whatever. No, she's a concerned parent, and she was talking about something that she noticed was really real that's happening. And so with Kennedy, it's great because, he's able with, obviously Trump said, go for it, find out what's going on here, and he's able to do that. So I think people, they're really sort of putting him down for certain things that he's saying, but he's just being open and transparent about his findings. You can't fudge the facts, right? If it's 1 in 8 boys have it, and many years ago it was 1 in the thousands, that's a huge difference right there.
During the roundtable, was there discussion particularly around why that's happening? Is it all vaccine related, or is it part? I know he's talked about the foods.
There's other stuff too. There's like mold issues, parasitic issues. There's all kinds of issues. The stuff that's in the food, usually it's some sort of metal or something's going on in the body that's going to set that off. But if you were to metal detox the child, if you were to strip all the red dye, yellow dye, things like that out of the child, watch the mold, make sure your home doesn't have mold in it, do a parasite detox. We're seeing huge change in children from doing that sort of, holistic therapy, if you would. Different schools, things like that.
Alex Bougher, what do you think the future looks like? 'Cause I think Kennedy's going to have an uphill battle. I don't think he's going to lose the battle, but I think it's an uphill battle taking on Big Pharma. It's kind of like him and Trump against the world, right? With a lot of concerned parents and others. But it seems like they have the deepest pockets, the endless lawyers, and this lock on the medical community where it's kind of like, your doctor's in their corner. Not your corner, he's in their corner. My doctor, thankfully, isn't. I've got one of those doctors like, you don't want to take medicine, don't take it. But I think a lot of doctors aren't in that camp, and it seems like it's going to be an all-out war.
Yes. Somebody, I forget who it was, but I read a tweet the other day that said, instead of Pride Month, we need a vaccine awareness or vaccine injury awareness month. And, that's so morbid to think about it and so sad to think about it. But unfortunately, it's not rare anymore. It's more common that you are vaccine injured in some way or another. You just may not know it yet. It may not happen right away. Maybe 10, 15 years, all of a sudden you have, some sort of autoimmune, or, you see a lot of Guillain-Barré after the COVID vaccine. I mean, that one pretty much happened right away, or myocarditis, things like that. So there's all these different vaccines. They all have different side effects. Everyone's bodies are different. But it's happening to so many people that I think that, a lot of people, if they see it happen to somebody else, it doesn't hit home for them. So they don't do anything. But now it's hitting home to someone in every single family. So I think it's not just Trump and Kennedy. Yes, is there an uphill battle? For sure. But I think with anything else, if we sit back and do nothing, nothing's going to happen. If we stand up with them and we say, hey, we're not going to vaccinate our kids. Hey, we don't want this stuff in our food. We're not going to eat it. We're the ones that have to stand up to make change. So, again, if you don't like the schools doing something, don't send them to school. If you don't want your kid to, get diabetes or be obese or be hyperactive, don't buy them the Skittles. It really comes down to us.
Stop the red dye 40.
Stop the red dye 40. Skittles is the worst, by the way. It's
I bet.
So it really comes down to us. They've opened the door for us, and they're able to do a lot of things, but it really comes down to every single household doing their part and not partaking in these things if they choose not to be.
Alex Bougher, tell everybody very quickly how they could find you and follow you.
Sure. Well, there's momsforliberty.org is our big website, and then you just go by county. So you'll find your state, you'll find your county. If you're in Bergen County, we have Facebook, Instagram, X, Moms for Liberty, Bergen County, New Jersey. Very easy to find us.